Scott, thank you so much for taking time for this interview. As we start, can you maybe talk a little bit about your background?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me today, Misha. So I've been in cyber for over 20 years. I
Mhm.
started my career, oddly enough, in the golf business as a golf professional, and then working for Cobra and Titleist, and that's how I got my start into sales. I started my career in cyber in January of 2001 with McAfee, where a lot of folks started their cyber career.
Mhm. And so that's kind of like a one point, but can you maybe talk a little bit about the arc, the trajectory? I noticed you were with Security Scorecard, Cyber GRX. Can you maybe paint like a broader picture of your career and your journey?
Yeah, of course. So after being with McAfee for 2.5 years, I had a great opportunity to join what I believe is the first threat intelligence vendor called iDefense. And there I was the VP of sales and marketing. We sold that company to VeriSign and then started another company called iSight Partners that was in a very similar space, the threat intelligence space. Um, so after that, I've been with mostly startups throughout my career,
Mhm.
all the way from sort of startups that had, were growing to the at CyberGRX being on the co-founding team and spending 5.5 years there. In June of 2021, I joined a firm that was a spin out of Moody's called Visible Risk, and shortly after I joined, we were acquired by BitSight in
Mhm.
October of 21.
Excellent. That paints the picture. It's when you connect the dots, it's really kind of shows what the chart looks like. So it's certainly very helpful. Well, cybersecurity is such a dynamic field, and it's changing all the time with technology, with kind of new threat vectors. But I think in general, as industry just grows so dramatically, and just looking at how much venture funding goes into the space, and how many more cybersecurity companies get kind of funded and grow and get acquired. As a result, I think a lot more, maybe more junior professionals are trying to make a switch either from technology to cybersecurity, sales. And from kind of your perspective and given your background, what would you recommend maybe either some of the more junior professionals at cybersecurity companies or um, technology sales looking to transition into cybersecurity sales? What would you recommend they focus on to set them up for success? If
Yeah,
you're looking to make a career and looking for potentially executive positions.
sure. The first thing I would say is do it. Cyber is obviously a very innovative, challenging, and growing industry, and there's great people. What I like most, I think, is that the people that I'm selling to are typically much smarter than me. Many are engineers and technologists, and I think it's one of the things that people don't think enough about is that I've never actually used any of the products that I represent since I'm not an internal security professional, which is very different than working for Apple or Google or another sort of business to consumer company. So I think to be successful in cybersecurity, you must be extremely competent on your product, your market, and really the challenges that your buyers have. Then I'd say lastly, you've got to be authentic, sincere, and honest, because it's been my experience in the last 20 plus years that CISOs have this incredible ability to sniff out exaggerations and hyperboles and stretchings of the truth. And I just think that cybersecurity requires a lot of research and a lot of continuing education to really be successful.
I understand. I understand. That's very helpful. Um, Looking into the future, we're just beginning of 2023. Looks like it's in some ways it may be a challenging year. Imagine you have a crystal ball and it can see into the future. Uh, VPs of sales, chief revenue officers, chief growth officers in cybersecurity companies. What are the top three things they'll be talking about 6 months from now, 12 months from now, you think?
Yeah, yeah, good, really good question. I mean, I think so. A few things. I would say probably the number one challenge is for chief revenue officers to really ensure that they have expertise in all areas of go to market. And when I say that, I'm talking about customer success, marketing, channels, partnerships, sales engineering, all those areas. And I think, a chief revenue officer must really understand how to engineer a machine that drives market engagement and ultimately generates leads. And without strong knowledge of all of these domains, I think hiring the right people is very difficult, since you don't really know how to vet that candidate, by asking the right questions. So I think that's the number one challenge. I think the second challenge is building automated KPIs and dashboards that drive real, decision making with precision. And automating metrics isn't always easy, but it's enormously valuable. And I think for a CRO to really be successful, they've got to have those metrics. And otherwise, I think they will struggle to provide the operational efficiency and the real decision making that their organization needs and requires. Mm-hmm. I'd say the final thing is maybe one of the more difficult, which is leveraging and satisfying your board of directors. So having a great and engaged board of directors is, at least in my opinion, vital for the success of an early stage or growth company. And board members have a lot of different requirements for reporting, for communication, for how they want you to reach out to leverage their network. And I also think that understanding where your company is from a benchmarking perspective relative to your board members' other portfolio companies is really important to allow you to focus on the areas that need the most improvement. So it's an evolving challenge that I think, if solved, is really important to the growth of a company.
Makes a lot of sense. I know we're talking to a lot of executives, both kind of on the sales side and the marketing side, and some of them are tremendously effective in making both teams work together. And in some companies, it still remains a challenge. The sales teams, they tend to be very time bound and driven by quarterly objectives. They're measured by accounts they bring in, by sales. Marketing seems to be a lot more nebulous. It still is this old saying that 50% of my marketing spend is wasted, but I just don't know which one. So it seems there's also always kind of this tension going. And I know you have such an amazing career and all those very impressive cybersecurity startups that are growing tremendously. From your experience, what are some of the tactics that would help cybersecurity sales executives work together with marketing in a very kind of robust way and kind of rowing in the same direction? What's some of the tips, some of the tactics that you would suggest?
Yeah. Well, look, you've got to have a strong partner in marketing. As a chief revenue officer, at least at CyberGRX, marketing reported up through my organization. I think that really helps. It allows the CRO to sort of adjudicate between the sales organization and the marketing organization. Mm-hmm. I think there's some strategies that are that you can certainly leverage. I think companies that recognize that in today's more digital economy, buyers engage sellers with more knowledge than ever before. They leverage whether it's private Slack channels or forums that give product reviews, company reviews, pricing, that sort of thing. It almost feels like today some buyers don't want to speak to a human at all. And so I'd say some of the strategies that I'm really excited about is first, just giving the buyer what they want. Provide the buyer with everything they need to make the right decision to engage with a human or not. And then secondly, and this sort of dovetails on the first one, is product-led growth. I love PLG, and again, it supports giving the buyer what they want by allowing them to use, a freemium version or a lightweight version of the product prior to engaging with the seller. And I think both of these strategies, enable this sort of self-qualification and help the buyer know if the product satisfies the requirements or not, which ultimately benefits the vendor, because you're not, talking to people that think they're, engaging with a different company.
Certainly, it makes a lot of sense. And switching gears a little bit, in terms of if you look at kind of sales technology, sales tactics, again, things change so quickly, both as kind of the society moves ahead and technology kind of moves ahead. But it seems there are kind of certain themes that become almost memes. I know inbound was big, invented by HubSpot, and was kind of entered the zeitgeist a little bit. But after a while, people realized, well, inbound is great. Unfortunately, only a fraction of it converts. So outbound is really important. So therefore, kind of ZoomInfo, Outreach, SalesLoft, and other kind of players went into play. Now it seems I hear more and more people talking about, to your points, they call it dark funnel. So conversations that happen that do not lend themselves to attribution easily. I mean, conversations in the hallway, or peers talking over coffee, or in private Slack rooms, something that vendors don't really see that much. What do you think? And now I think the most recent one is Chat GPT, right? Do you have any opinion on how what some of the tactics that work now, and how some of those technologies will reshape the workload of sales professionals from kind of SDR level to mid-level executives and to C-level executives in sales organizations?
Yeah, it's been my experience that you don't have to choose just one. That you can certainly in the companies that I've worked for, we leverage what we call the omni-channel approach,
Mm-hmm.
which is both a real creating that real inbound machine, which I think is incredibly important. And to your point, maybe they convert at a smaller percentage, but the folks that do convert that do come in really do want to know more about your company and your product. Where outbound, you do get a lot of calls where someone says, I'll take your call if you promise never to call me again. Well, that doesn't seem like the right idea to me. And then, I think one of the things you're referencing there is sort of intent-based marketing. So how do you find out if a buyer has intent? And there are some strategies you can leverage there, Bombara, TechTarget, other things where you're syndicating content that allows you to understand if your target market or your target buyers are actually searching for the thing that you're selling. And then finally, there's always going to be events, and there's always going to be creating those human connections. And I think that's incredibly important as well. I mentioned earlier about the board of directors. In my previous roles, we've really leveraged our great boards of directors and our investors to help us get to the right point. And again, I'm not typically trying to change people's mind. I want to get in front of people who want to improve their security program, or open to talking about new and effective ways to do that, and want to have a conversation. And I think that goes back to, if they can have a conversation with someone who is incredibly competent and understands the product and the market and their challenges, it becomes a much more fruitful conversation. Rather than, before we get started, I'd like to show you a quick PowerPoint. It's about 30 minutes long. Like, buyers don't really want to hear that. One of the things that we did at one of the companies recently, I won't say who, is we started every meeting by after introductions by saying the following. We would say, look, guys, we don't know a lot about your program. There's a couple of ways we can go today. We can walk you through our sales deck, which will tell you what we do, how we do it, who we are, or we can just go right into a demo and just give you a voiceover of how we help our customers. Up to you guys, we're okay either way. Well, what do you think buyers said? Everyone said, let's go to the demo. Why did they say that? Because no one likes to get PowerPointed. And so it was incredibly effective to just, again, giving the buyer what they want, engaging with them the way that they want to be engaged with, as opposed to, look, I'll tell you about pricing at the end of this conversation. No. I can go into the grocery store and see pricing for every single thing that I buy. Why can't this experience be just like that? And so that's what we've tried to do, is just sort of make the buying experience the way that buyers want that experience to flow.
Exactly. It makes a lot of sense. It's interesting. I think, well, talking of memes, I think PLG as a concept, I think it's kind of entered the it has become certainly a lot more popularized, and there are so many success stories in this regard, and this kind of changes the dynamic, so that's almost you pull demand out of the market rather than push. And what's interesting is that we do talk as part of the our conversations within the community. We do talk to a lot of CISOs, and it's interesting that every time we bring the topic of vendors, sometimes you get a very visceral reaction, to the point some of them say, well, I do have an email. It does exist, but all my communications happen internally in Slack, because just I get bombarded. Another one said, I turn off the phone. My phone is on silent from Monday morning until Friday evening. I just don't take calls, because
Right.
it's important. I mean, again, going back to ZoomInfo and Outreach and all other kind of providers, which I understand that kind of sales teams are incentivized, and they're very kind of hard targets for SDRs to how many meetings to generate and things like this. So I understand how some of the tactics can become as aggressive, which kind of, I guess, brings to the big question for me that I'm still trying to understand. If we look at the, let's say, total addressable market, or even a subset of the total addressable market, the accounts that fit the ideal customer profile for a certain cybersecurity company, within that, accounts or executives, prospects who are ready to have a conversation, as you mentioned, who are kind of, they understand the problem and they want to learn more, and it's obvious that they're at a stage of the customer journey, then either they're ready to buy, or they're ready, or at least they're ready to engage. But I think the problem that a lot of cybersecurity companies are facing is that at any given point in time, it's a fairly small percentage of your ICP universe, and the rest of them, they're busy putting out other fires. They're busy with other problems, and how do you engage them? What kind of playbooks do you use to engage them, to educate? Essentially, how do you educate people about a problem who are busy with something else? And is it a marketing problem? Is it a partially sales problem with some of the type of outreach or some sort of playbooks? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this isn't a popular word when it comes to early stage or growth companies, but you have to be a little bit patient. And what I mean by that is it's not reasonable to think for most companies, in your first year that you're going to do $10 million worth of ARR. You have to be a little bit patient, understand that you have to establish some level of trust. These are security people that you're dealing with. They are like all of us, they don't love to be cold called. They don't even love cold emails. Do you have to use some of those techniques? Of course you do in some cases, but I think that's deeper into your journey. So if you're starting a company, you've got to go to some of the events. You've got to start to establish that brand awareness. You've got to start to establish, some of those connections. And I think it just boils down to different techniques at different stages of your journey. If you're a $200 million ARR company, that's completely different than if you're a $1 million ARR company. And so, but I think you have a lot of startup executives who come from a $75 million company. They start a company and they try to use the same tactics, thinking that they have similar brand awareness as the larger company they're with. So, look, I think it just be reasonable. Be reasonable and be, as I said earlier, honest, authentic, and sincere. Would you want someone blowing up your phone 4 times a day? No, you would be incredibly annoyed. And if you did answer the phone, you would sort of say something like, "Why are you calling me so often?" That's no way to start a relationship. And so start your relationship with the right way, just like you do with friends and family and that sort of thing, and maintain that relationship the same way. You got to give to get, all those things. I just don't think it's that difficult. I think that people have just are not always using the right technique at the right stage.
Certainly, makes a lot of sense. Just be human. I mean, don't treat people as leads. Treat them as humans with their wants and needs, and I think it will get you a long way.
Exactly.
That's awesome, Scott. I know we're coming up on time. Last quick questions. Imagine you have magic wand, and how would you finish a sentence? Actually, two. One is, in 2023, I wish CISOs fill in the blank, and in 2023, I wish cybersecurity sales teams, again, fill in the blank.
Yeah. All right. The first one, I wish CISOs. Gosh, I haven't thought too much about that at all, but I would say I'm noticing a little bit of a trend over the last couple of years where some CISOs, not that many, will actually post on LinkedIn something like, here's an email that I get from this company, 5 times a week or whatever, and they sort of bash a vendor in a public forum, which I don't think is a good look. I know some CISOs that can both manage that vendor sort of noise and also engage with good vendors who treat them well, that they trust. So understand. I would say that CISOs must, as it relates to engaging with vendors, must understand that they might work for a company that has SDRs and that cold calls, and so they've got to be careful there. But not something big there. I would say from a 12 months from now, salespeople in cyber will be either out of the sales profession, or they will be much more competent than they are today. I think the sort of the macroeconomics conditions that we're facing have already started to tighten budgets, and buying cycles are getting longer. And I think this just requires sellers to add more value to the buying experience, and that value is around competency. So my hope is that all cybersecurity professionals, including myself and others, increase their competency in all areas of their business: product market, buyer psychology, ensuring customer satisfaction, and that sellers are just experts in all areas of their business in an effort to really provide maximum value to their customers and their prospects, especially given the economic conditions that we're facing. I think that's what I would hope for sales executives.
Certainly. Well, Scott, this was very interesting, and I really appreciate you taking your time to share your insights and your point of view. Where can people find you? Are you mostly on LinkedIn? What's the best way to connect?
Yeah, LinkedIn is, I think, the way we all do now. And so I'm pretty active on there. I'm not a big poster. You won't see me, treating LinkedIn like Facebook, but I check it every day.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.